How's everyone doing this morning? Good. Thanks for having me. Glad to be here. Um, as was shared, my name is Mike Savage, Chief Architect at Red Hat. I touched on it up there. I did work for Synex prior to Red Hat, but I was a funded head um, for Red Hat software at Synex. That was in 2012, and then I came to Red Hat in 2018. So technically, I've kind of been at Red Hat for 13 years now. Kind of hard to fathom, but let's dive in. So we're going to do a company overview. We'll talk a little bit about open source. We'll go a little bit into more detail about customers and partners I work with. Maybe talk a little bit about how you could get at Red Hat, because your first day at Red Hat will give you a red fedora. Pretty stylish, huh? So as was shared, I graduated from NC State in chemical engineering. She asked me, but you're a chief architect at a software company. How'd that happen? So called student loans. It needed to be paid off. No, but when I was interviewing, much like you're preparing to do, the chemical engineering industry was in a kind of a down, businesses kind of go through cyclical, year to year gyrations. And the chemical industry, United States at that time was kind of in a low point. And so they weren't really hiring anybody. And if you did hire you, they wanted me to like move to a paper mill in the middle of nowhere in Louisiana. And I thought, well, I could do that, but let me keep interviewing. And then ended up talking to a recruiter for Herc Celanese. He said, looking at your skill sets here, I know a recruiter for IBM. Why don't you go talk to him and see what's going on there? And next thing you know, get my first job out of college at IBM. As he kind of touches on, cut my teeth on SunOS. Who's familiar with Solaris operating system? What is Solaris?
Oh, I've just heard that.
Cool. It's if you go back, a couple of decades, there was Windows. Microsoft Windows was around, but a lot of times companies ran a lot of their really heavy business systems on different flavors of Unix. And SunOS was one that kind of grew out of the Berkeley Labs in California, and then eventually became Solaris. And then roughly in the 90s, Linux kind of outpaced it and became more popular. But it's similar to Linux under the covers as far as how you administrate it. It's also where I was a lab administrator in the chemie department. And so in order to save time and having to ride my bike on the campus to the computer labs, some buddies of mine said, you should try out this Linux distribution called Red Hat. You can load it up on a PC. It's kind of like having a big, expensive enterprise Unix, but on a PC at your house. And that allowed me to dial in to the campus. Who knows what a modem is? Right? The old school modems, right? Put your phone on it, dial in. That allowed me to learn how to start remote administrating systems, and I didn't have to ride my bike into campus. Saved me a lot of time. It was about a 20-minute bike ride. But that's where I kind of started to learn about Linux and open source. And what was really cool about it is it wasn't a closed box. I could really open up the source code and look at it. And so that's kind of how I got into Red Hat and worked for IBM straight out of college. But then a little bit about me, I live in Simpsonville, about an hour and a half down the road, right next to Greenville, and lived there with my wife, Lee. Audrey actually just graduated this past spring from here at University of South Carolina, and she's taking a gap year, trying to figure out where she wants to go to grad school. She lives about a couple of blocks off of 5 Point. It's funny, the clicker, I usually have one, but I use it at night sometimes with the laser pointer to find my cat. That's her right there, Maisie. I gotta remember to pack it sometimes. And then this is what's I love to cut up cards and put them back together. And then I did put my chemical engineering degree to use. I've done some collaborations with some breweries in Greenville, brewing beer. I got into home brewing a long time ago, and then because I'm an engineer, I started to like build big systems, and next thing you know, I'm meeting some people in Greenville and brewing beer. So it's pretty cool. I think that's an important thing too to remember as you go into the working sector is don't forget your hobbies. Always have a passion about something fun. Work-life balance is important. So make sure you kind of keep that in mind before. So I am a chief architect in the field CTO organization for the Americas, covering the globe really, but mostly focused on the United States and Latin America, some over in Europe a little bit, and a lot around FSI or the financial services sector. And I also am concentrating on our ecosystem partners. And that's the important thing to remember about software. You can't do anything without hardware, right? And storage and networking and something to run on top. So and cloud as well. So it's important that we maintain our relationships with our partners so that we can better serve our shared customers. I do a lot of workshops, demos, presentations, various topics, and always, what's great about this field that you're in is that it's always going to be new, right? It's not going to get boring, trust me. You're always going to be able to learn new things and approach it from the view that every day is a chance for you to learn more and to grow, okay? So let's talk about a brief company overview. We are the leading provider of open source enterprise software. Who knows what open source is? What is your view on open source?
It means like the sources are open to the public and not proprietary.
That's right. And then what's cool about that is you might have some great ideas and you're free to, post your ideas out there, and it's based on the merit of the ideas and how good it is, right? Not based on politics or who you know. It's based on the best ideas. Typically are the ones that get advanced. That's really cool about open source. So 90% of the Fortune 500 are Red Hat customers. I was looking on that list. A lot of the people that you might be interviewing with, they're running Red Hat software. They are. Okay. So, and they're using open source. So it's very important to remember that. Roughly about 22,000 employees, all kinds of offices across the globe. And that important part on the right is we were the first $3 billion open source company in the world. As was touched on in the opening, we are a wholly owned subsidiary of IBM. So that $3 billion was right before IBM acquired us. So who has an idea of what IBM paid for us? Just take a guess. Who's got a guess? Open source software. We don't own it. So it can't be worth much, right?
Open source is free to anybody.
Right.
And IBM wanted them, so they paid for it. So he wants to know how much did they pay for it?
Whoa, that would be nice. 34 billion. And so what's the important thing here is that what I just touched on is the idea of open source and the concept of it. They didn't pay for IP, they paid for process, and they paid for the culture, and they paid for the idea and the way that we handle the approaching the world of open source and utilizing it in enterprise IT. It's pretty powerful, right? And what's interesting too is that they acquired us around 2019-ish. And it's 6 years later. Typically, IBM, when they acquire a company, they acquire the company, move everybody over to IBM, and then slowly hand walking papers to half the company. They haven't done that with us because they understand how important what we do and how we do it is so powerful. So they've left us alone, which is a pretty good indication that it's a cool place to be.
So do you get a paycheck from IBM or from Red Hat?
Red Hat, fully owned subsidiary. We're part of the cloud and software division at IBM, and we'll I think I might have some info on that, but we are a significant contributor to the success of the IBM stock price. So let's see, here's kind of the brief rundown. Remember 1993, that's when I was at NC State. That's when my friends turned me on to the distribution. Our first release of Enterprise Linux in 2002. Some other important ones are like OpenShift. Who's familiar with container technology? What containers are?
Very important.
Yeah, let's put that as our homework. Let's get into understanding what containers are. It's the idea of instead of just running your process out on the open operating system, it's the notion of packaging that process along with any related libraries and other types of code configuration, package it together, and then that'll allow you to run it wherever you have an enterprise Linux system that can run it. And it's a powerful concept because you're packaging things and everybody agrees on how you do it. And then it makes it easier to run your software wherever you need to. That's the concept of the hybrid cloud, running it on-prem, running it on the edge, running it in the point of sale system, running it in the network tower that your cell phone calls are going through. When you're buying stuff at the lunch, the cafeteria, it's going through Red Hat software, right? It's everywhere.
So, and tell me if I'm right or wrong, but when you're using containers, which is a really big thing that's taken off right now, instead of what's all behind the scenes on your laptops right now that's running, but it's like at a click of a button, it'll pop up Word, PowerPoint, or whatever. Those are all sucking up the energy. But if all of a sudden you need all that energy within your computer to be containerized, I guess you would say, you would just say, shut down everything, and I only want Excel and maybe some of these databases that's intercepting into it, so I can actually pull in things and do things at a faster rate. Correct? Yeah. And so all of a sudden you've shut down all the stuff in the back door, the windows, and to power up your machine to make things work harder and faster.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's kind of, you don't realize it, but if you go to use Google to do web searches, that the website is running containers behind the scenes. And so in the previous to containers, that process or processes that were running on those systems, if you wanted to upgrade it or do some maintenance, you kind of had to uninstall and reinstall, and it's very kludgy, right, and slow, and involves a lot of latency. But with containers, you don't realize it, but they're updating that the capabilities of the website like 50 times a day. Don't realize it. You refresh it sometimes when it seems to hang, you refresh it because they've updated the container behind the scenes. You just don't know it. And that's an important concept, no matter whether it's a website running search or whether it's the latest, AI model that's running containerized. It's a very, very powerful concept. Make sure that you kind of get into that and learn more about it. And then you see in 2019, I think, was where right after we hit 3 billion in revenue, Red Hat was part of IBM. And then the latest is Neural Magic, who does a lot around open source with AI and large language models. This kind of shows what our revenue looked like prior to being acquired. After 2019, our numbers get pulled in under the IBM overall number. So you kind of have to pull down the IBM SEC filings every quarter. And they're usually talking about how much Red Hat delivered to the bottom line for IBM. I think I was looking at the last quarter for Q2 of this year. An example is we were double-digit growth year over year. So essentially 12, I think, to 13% year over year growth. And so that kind of shows you how we were able to continue this type of exponential increase on the amount of money. And I think it's probably in the order of 6 or 7 billion right now a year and climbing. So let's talk more about open source and why it's important to Red Hat, and then why we've been so successful. So we essentially participate. Remember I talked about getting involved in that open source project or projects. We participate in the community with all these open source projects, and then we take them, integrate them all together, package it up, and then make it available for our customers to purchase. And when they purchase our software, they're not purchasing a license. We don't call them licenses. We call them a subscription. And essentially, it's a subscription for support. So we package up the software and we say, we're not really selling you the software because it's open source. We can't. We don't own it. But what we are selling is the support of that software, which is very important because a lot of times open source is great, has great ideas, but you still need to be able to apply bug fixes to things and apply updates. And that's what takes all of the work that we kind of got very good at over the last couple of decades and deliver open source for our customers. And this shows you the various products and the cornerstone, Red Hat Enterprise Linux, which is the operating system, and then other types of offerings, virtualization, middleware, OpenStack, which is the notion of running a cloud like Amazon Web Services or Google or Azure, but running it in your own data center. And then OpenShift is what I was touching on about containers. It's a distributed compute cluster that runs containers at scale. All right, makes it easier for our customers to deploy these applications, maintain them, make sure they're certified, compliant, meet auditing requirements, etc., and to do so in a very stable manner. And then our Ansible automation platform is a very popular offering that's growing at a very, very rapid pace. And that's the notion of automating all the things. I think I even saw that someone created an Ansible module for an internet connected light bulb. So if you can touch it with code, you can automate it in Ansible. It's pretty easy. And then this kind of shows you some of the more popular projects behind the scenes. Apache, web server, Patternfly is kind of a graphical presentation layer. Kubernetes is the the steering of the boat, which is part of the OpenShift product, and then Tux is our kernel. It's upstream, upstream of RHEL, and then Podman runs containers, and then VLLM. I touched on Neural Magic. VLLM is our open source foray into running large language models at scale in a open source manner.
And Kubernetes is a big word too.
Yeah.
So remember that one, because that and containers are moving quick, very fast.
Yes, Kubernetes is an interesting project because it was started by Google. Remember I touched on there running, containers all the time behind the scenes. It was started by Google on a complete rewrite by some of their engineers of how they run containers in their cloud. And Google was really good at running the process, the containers, but what they weren't good at is multi-tenancy. Like how can we do this with multiple business units or multiple cost centers? So they came to Red Hat, us, and said, will you help us help make Kubernetes multi-tenant? So that's how we got involved in the open source side of Kubernetes. And eventually we take that upstream Kubernetes and deliver it to our customers as OpenShift.
So, and any of these guys can jump on board as in the middle there on the project at any point in time.
Yeah, we're gonna touch on that in a second. I usually talk about that at the beginning, but I'm finding it's better that we talk about it at the end. And we'll see why here in a second. Industry and now analysts. So big deal. You say that your software is cool, but it's really more powerful when people in the industry kind of rank you compared to the rest of the competition. Okay, so if we look at the 2024 Forrester Wave for infrastructure automation, remember I talked about Ansel a second ago? We're way far to the right, head and shoulders above everyone else. That shows you how powerful the notion of open source and automation is. Whereas instead of some company putting together their proprietary point solution, now you have this open mindset of let's automate all the things. Let's all talk together how we automate storage and networking and operating systems, and containers, et cetera, all together. That sounds like it's pretty powerful, right? That's why we're seeing so much success there. And there's some pretty big players here, right? Microsoft, we're ahead of Microsoft in that. And other companies that have historically been very powerful, BMC, Canonical, Broadcom. So we're kind of showing how successful you can be in that model. So we're a challenger for DevOps. DevOps, who knows what DevOps is? What's DevOps?
I mean, it's people that do the operations behind the scene, like the networking and stuff, and they do the development
Right.
on the front end and back end.
Yes. So what's important there is that you use that in the same sentence, because earlier in my career, when I was a developer, we would write our code and we would just throw it over the fence to ops, right? Not my problem. You figure out how to run it. So then when I kind of moved over to operations and I was doing more systems administration, I kind of saw like, I know what these developers are going through, but at the same time, they were still throwing junk over the fence to me. And it was up to me to, take this grenade and figure out how to run it. And so DevOps was born as a means to get the developers to work directly with the operation. So instead of separate meetings, here's an idea. Why don't we go to the same meeting and talk to each other? That's how DevOps was born. So there are companies that they do nothing but DevOps. And that's GitLab and Atlassian. And the reason Microsoft is up there because they bought GitHub. Okay, so that's all your players on there. They're big on the DevOps space. So we're trying to get there, but this is where we rely. When I touched on earlier, where I work with ecosystem partners. This is where we rely on partners, and that partnership is what's allowing us to kind of
slowly get back up there on the right. And then we're talking about container management. We're talking about OpenShift. There we are with Microsoft, Google, Amazon Web Services. Those are the big three cloud players. And we're right there with them. And here's a little inside baseball. What are they running their clouds on? Not Red Hat, because if they would, we'd need more money. We would be making 100 billion. They're running Linux. They're running open source. So that's showing you the power of open source, right? Google's cloud's built on open source. Azure's more and more every day, even though they're Microsoft Windows. They used to hate Linux. Now they embrace it. They even have their own Linux distribution now. And then, of course, Amazon Web Services. Huge open source utilization there. And then if we also look at the cloud application platforms, we're kind of there too with those three as well. So Red Hat, open source, very important things to remember as you go forward in your careers. And then multi-cloud container platforms. That's where we really shine, okay? Because Red Hat Enterprise Linux is the core scaffolding of a lot of our products. And you can run Red Hat Enterprise Linux anywhere. You can run it on bare metal. You can run it on an edge device, as I touched on. You can run, a containerized version of our software on a cell tower somewhere. But the key here is anywhere that you can run Red Hat Enterprise Linux, you can run our platform. So whether that's cloud, AWS, Google, or Azure, or IBM's cloud, or what have you, you can run our software. That's important to companies so that they don't put all their eggs in one basket. Okay? They can hedge on if Amazon one day says, I'm going to increase the prices by triple. You might be stuck if that's the only place you can run it. But you could say, okay, that's fine. I'm going to run it over on Azure now. They give me a better deal anyway. Okay? So you can start treating your cloud providers like streaming providers, right? It's too expensive right now. I'm going to shut down over here. I'm going to run it over here. Then they're charging me more over here. It's good to be agile and be hybrid, and that's where we show the strengths there in that container platforms. So let's talk about our customers and partners. Like I touched on earlier, we're just software, so we can't do this alone, right? So we are used by 100% of U.S. airlines, and it's not our fault when you're delayed, though. Okay, just make sure you understand that. We can't do anything about how they use our software. 100% of U.S. communication providers, your calls and your texts, they're going through Red Hat software. Period and story. U.S. commercial banks. I work with a lot of the banks, not only in the U.S. but also globally. Huge users of Red Hat. The executive departments, three-letter agencies are using Red Hat, and interestingly enough, the concept of the open source is so important there. The NSA, National Security Agency, actually created a project called SE Linux, Security Enhanced Linux, that is a component that can be utilized within the operating system to make it more secure. And so they donated that to the world as an effort to increase the security of Linux. And then huge player in healthcare, hospitals, and research agencies rely on our software in a lot of cases for heavy compute, and more with artificial intelligence and large language models. So some of those customers I touched on, UPS, Delta. I actually was in some conversations with Deutsche Bank a couple weeks ago. Oil and gas is also big, British Petroleum there. And then on the banking side across the globe, DBS, and then in Latin America as well with Avianca and Corpflex. Then this is where I was talking about the silos, right, of the industries, and the various verticals, FSI, telco, oil and gas again. BMW is an interesting one. They're working with us on the concept of running Linux in a car, and utilizing a fully distributed concept of running a cloud across cars, right? And having cars be able to communicate with an overarching control plane and let you know, like, we're seeing anomalies in these various vehicles, and they can know ahead of time that they should schedule some maintenance. Pretty cool stuff. And then even in defense, you see there Lockheed Martin. The notion of containers is pretty cool with them because, as I touched on, the ability to switch out software rapidly and easily. They can use it in, a good example is flight simulators. Instead of having a flight simulator that's only designed to mimic a Black Hawk helicopter, they can switch it out to some pilots for a stealth bomber or a big transport jet or whatever, right? So that, and they can do that on the fly. And so it makes it really easy to have flight simulators that are very agile themselves. And then I touched on all the, we need something to run on. Our cloud partners, AWS, Google, and then more of our OEM partners that have the hardware, the networking hardware like Cisco, or the servers from Dell, and then our parent company, IBM. We even run RHEL on mainframes now, and take the notion of containers to mainframes, which is kind of meta because that's where the concept of containers actually first started, probably about 50 years ago. And then really big player now, NVIDIA, making a lot of the GPUs that are utilized for AI and model training and inference servers and delivering AI to you. And then, as I touched on, partners that are other software vendors, or ISVs, we call them. This is just an idea of who all we work with, whether it's business software like SAP, or Git, like GitLab, or Infoblox and Sysdig for informational systems that are utilized to give more insights and feedback and costing models, et cetera, within the software. So how do we get a red hat? Okay, so there's my red hat, and I was fortunate enough to be the partner SA. That's a cool award, isn't it? Partner SA Rockstar. They thought I was a rock star. It was a big surprise, but let's see how you can get your red hat. Okay, so we have internship opportunities, and it's about to start in October, February. Okay, so you use that code, you can go to the job site and search on internship, and just keep your eye on that site and that time frame. And if you go on there one day and there's nothing available, don't throw up your hands and say, never mind. Okay, kind of be vigilant. Maybe set up a recurring reminder to go on to the website and just check, because they're going to be posting them, and then they might go away. They're going to post some more, but it's from October to February. And then, are you providing this deck to them afterwards? Because I mean, you can also, that second link shows you what a Red Hat internship's like, and then another article about Red Hat research. That's the division within Red Hat that works very tightly with higher education. And as a matter of fact, I'm trying to work through getting Red Hat Research to work more with the University of South Carolina. So that's to be continued there. All right, so this is where when I converted it to a PowerPoint, it shifted my 95% down, but you can still see it, right? So this is where employers are looking for you, okay? So pay attention to this, very important, because this was a new survey that was just recently released, okay? State of tech talent, right here. Acquiring and retaining tech talent 2025 from the Lakes Foundation. They post this report every year about what companies are saying about who they're looking for, what kind of skills they're looking for, what are the trends, et cetera. And as of now, 95% are saying they're seeking hands-on open source talent, okay? The key here, not that you know about it, hands-on, okay? Who's been hands-on with open source this past week or this past month? Anyone? Okay, let's start getting that more hands raised, okay? So if we look at it, 85% want to see a portfolio and examples of previous IT accomplishments, okay? 71% certification skills. Formal college or university degree, okay? We're good there, right? But where we need to do more is this portfolio and examples of previous IT accomplishments and relevant hands-on experience and certification. So how do we do that? You know, Mike, I'm already in school. What else do I need to do? They want to see things like getting certified. So start looking into what that might entail, okay? This kind of shows you if you were to get certified as RHCSA, this number is a little bit older, but you use 6 figures, and the same for an RHCE. That's just the RHCSA next level up, okay? Now, how do we get that hands-on? Who has a GitHub account? Who uses their GitHub account? Okay, we got to keep those hands up, right? Start using your GitHub account, right? Go on GitHub and start looking for some projects that you might be interested in, right? What drives you? Are you interested in networking and software and maybe automation or what have you? You don't have to necessarily write code. It could be something where you just join it because you're interested in the subject matter or the area of the project is focused. But they might need help with documentation. Or start, a lot of these projects will have recurring meetings like Zoom or Google Meet, and you can it's public. You can show up and just listen, start learning, find out how to get involved in the process, right? Find a project. Okay, so like one I do is have workshops. That's how the Ansible automation platform team at Red Hat creates workshops for their customers. This is out in the public. If you wanted to get involved with it, you just fork it, pull it down, see what's going on in it, and submit a pull request. Say, or maybe say, raise an issue. You know, Mike Savage, you're really lame on how you document things. I think it could be done better. So I'm going to start documenting some things and submitting it as a pull request. That's how you get involved. And that's what IT companies want to see. And it's going to be not just IT companies, it's going to be all these that Mr. John put here that are highlighted, right? Even with some of the ones that are not. There was one here I saw, LPL Financial. They're not highlighted. Financial services, they're using software. They're using it. They might need you to learn how to do things. And it might not be open source Linux, but it's the process because there's more than Linux going on in these communities, okay? So get involved, okay? And say hi to, if you're on GitHub, say hi to me, I'm Heat Miser. My hands are really hot, so I'm Heat Miser. All right, so how can I also get hands-on? You can create a Red Hat account, join the Red Hat Developer Program, $0. Okay, and then you can have access to all this software that you can use on these projects. Okay, and all the information, how to do it there, so you can get RHEL, we call it Red Hat Enterprise Linux, RHEL for short. Software collections and application streams, that's, more things to run on top, examples of what companies use. You can get developer code and tool sets, and then numerous add-ons. Okay, it's free. Use it, learn it. And then also on the topic of AI, we created InstructLab, and that's at instructlab.ai. And this is trying to teach you how to take the concept of large language models and open source it. So you might see that you're using, and this also could show you how to run models locally and start learning how to interact with them locally on a laptop, and say, run a Granite, say you run a Granite model, and you ask it a question about, hey, how would I automate this light bulb that Mike Savage talked about? And it might not have any information on it. It might say, I don't know. This is going to show you how you could actually submit a PR upstream and then get your notion of how you might train that model to learn how to do a particular automation task, and then get it added into the subset that gets trained on. So that's kind of how the process works with getting these LLMs to learn new things. And it's the same it's the same idea. It's just knowledge, right? You're increasing the knowledge that's available for the model. So in closing, we're the leading open source software for enterprise IT. And it's actually, we're getting more and more to where we're focusing more on the mid-market customers as well now. Multi-billion-dollar company. We talked about all the products and services, and then we have an opportunity to work globally across all kinds of markets. And remember, even if you don't, I applied to Red Hat two times before the third time I got hired. So if it doesn't work out, it doesn't mean you can't be active in open source. Doesn't mean you can't get a job in this line of this field, because Red Hat is running everywhere. And not only that, there are other open source software opportunities out there just beyond Red Hat as well. Okay? So take a look at that.
And open source salaries are competitive with the other markets, correct?
Yeah, I mean, if you look, this one right here. That's like, you can see what companies are in this report. It's everywhere. Open source is running the world right now. It is. And so get involved, get that GitHub account going, get involved in some projects, download free software, and that is what's going to make you shine above when you're going to these interviews. When you go to the job fair, you can say, I'm working towards this, this, and this. Here's my handle. Here's the link to my GitHub. Check out some of the repositories. See the issues that I'm participating in. Look that I'm now a part of the documentation team for the DLLM project, whatever. Okay? Just get involved. Whatever interests you, that's how you're going to be successful, and that's how you're going to start advancing your career out there. Okay? Any questions?
Thank you, Mike.